My husband is a weak scholar. Some people say that he murdered the prince, and I slammed the table in anger. My husband is the weakest man, and you actually slandered him for murdering my brother. The reborn husband. Oh, yes, I am weak and can't take care of myself, and you promote me like this. Later I learned that this husband who I called weak and can't take care of himself, actually became the regent who had power over the court and the country in order to avenge me after my death in the previous life. Father, just give it to me. I hugged the emperor's thigh and wailed without caring about my image. Your son really wants that coral tree. No, it was just a tribute. I haven't even seen it for 2 days. The emperor reached out to pull me away, but I hugged him tightly, so he couldn't pull me away, so he had to try to reason with me. You girl, can't you wait a few days and I'll find a reason to reward you. If you do this, your brothers will say I'm partial to you. But isn't your heart partial to you? I sniffed as I spoke, and pulled the corner of the dragon robe to wipe my tears. Who made me your only legitimate daughter? It's right for you to be partial to me. Hey, my dragon robe? The emperor looked a little disgusted. Okay, father dislikes me. Seeing this, I became more excited. I knew that after my daughter got married, father and I would be estranged. Okay, since father dislikes me so much, I will not come here in the future, so as not to bother father. What's wrong with you, kid? I didn't say I dislike you. Okay, I'll give you the coral tree you want. Isn't it enough to give it to you? The emperor was helpless when he saw this. Don't cry, your mother will come and say that I bullied you later. Okay. Seeing that my goal was achieved, I stopped crying in a second, stood up from the ground and patted my skirt, since you said so. Then I also want the night shining pearl that was tributed with the coral tree, the one that glows. The emperor was shocked. How did you know that the night shining pearl was tributed this year? Father, what's wrong with you? Are you reluctant to give it up? When did I say such a thing? The emperor was about to refute, but I interrupted him. I knew that after I got married, I would no longer be a member of the royal family. Even my father, who used to love me so much, has started to be stingy with these things. I felt more and more wronged and wanted to cry again. I don't know why Yinzhong likes to read books at night recently. He is in poor health to begin with. I hope he won't damage his eyes. I will be so sad. Okay, take it all. I will give you the key to the warehouse, take whatever you want. Thank you, father. I was about to kowtow to thank him for his kindness, when I saw someone outside. The chief eunuch came to report, Princess, just now the servants in your house came to report that the prince consort accidentally fell down while reading by the lake. Now his condition has worsened. The imperial physician said that he may need 100-year-old ginseng to nourish his body. You should go back and take a look. Eat a big one. I stood up immediately after hearing that. I remember there is 100-year-old ginseng in the warehouse. Hurry up and send it to the princess house. I will be there soon. That is the ginseng I have kept for a long time for emergency use. The emperor panicked immediately after hearing that. Isn't it an emergency now, father? I said as I walked out quickly. If anything happens to Yinzhong, I will die. Hey, you girl, what are you talking about? The emperor's voice came from behind. Okay, a daughter who is married off is like water spilled. You can use it as you like. When I hurried back to the princess mansion, I happened to meet Mu Yinzhong, who had just woken up. Yinzhong, are you okay? I started to feel distressed when I saw him. This little white face, these weak eyes, this thin body. Why do you think this person has to go to the lake to read books? No, it must be that the lake was not dug well. It is definitely not Yinzhong's problem. What's wrong with Yinzhong? He just likes to read books. Fill up the lake immediately. I whispered to the servants, and when I looked up again, the person who was lying on the bed actually stumbled out of bed. Oh, you haven't recovered yet, why are you getting out of bed? I immediately went up to him with a heartache and wanted to support him. Unexpectedly, this man was more impatient than me. As soon as I walked in front of him, he hugged me. Ping. He leaned over to my ear and gently called my name. Hey, I'm here. Damn, his call made my heart melt. I miss you so much. He whispered this sentence, and my neck felt hot, and a drop of hot tears fell on my neck. I really miss you so much. What's wrong? Why are you crying? I was a little at a loss. Mu Yinzhong and I grew up together, and we can be called childhood sweethearts. This guy has been a gentle and elegant person since he was a child. He always speaks and treats people in a gentle and kind manner, and never shows his joy in front of outsiders. Even on the day when the news of the death of the Marquis and his wife came back, he just tried to hold back his tears, held my younger brother's hand, and told me in a choked voice that he no longer had a father and a mother. We have known each other for more than 10 years. When have I ever seen him cry so fragilely in my ear? I just miss you too much, he said as he hugged me tighter. Oh, okay, I won't stay in the palace for too long in the future. It's not because the coral tree is so beautiful, I really want it too much. I thought he was sick, and he was angry with me because I stayed in the palace for most of the day and didn't come back. Who knew that he was stunned after hearing what I said, and then let me go, looking at my face seriously and slightly shocked. Ping, you just mentioned the coral tree. Yes, it was the tribute from the East China Sea a few days ago. The red coral tree was so beautiful that I fell in love with it at first sight. And the night shining pearl, I also brought it back for you, so that you don't have to worry about hurting your eyes when you read at night. I finished talking and saw Mu Yunjol, still staring at me blankly. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable again? I immediately started to worry again. I told you not to go to the lake to read. If you are afraid of the heat, I will ask the servants to put more ice in your room. Ah, you can't put too much? You are not in good health. Don't make your condition worse. What are you laughing at? Why did this man suddenly laugh again? It's over. I'm afraid he is stupid because of the fever. I reached out to touch his forehead, but he grabbed it. Ping Ping, I'm just too happy. He became happier and happier as he spoke, and even his eyes were full of smiles. What are you happy about? Night Pearl? Then you really have to be happy, because I begged my father for a long time, and he finally agreed to give it to me. I was a little proud as I said, I'm the only one who loves you so much. He kissed my hand, and he placed my hand on his chest, his eyes gentle. How can our Ping Ping be so good? Oh my god, my sick beauty looks so beautiful when she smiles. You are good too, you are good too. She is so beautiful, even if you want stars, I have to get them for you. Such a beautiful person is actually my husband-in-law. Hee to Ping Ping, I want to tell you something next, don't get excited, and don't make a fuss. Mu Yunjol said to me seriously. Okay, what's the matter? I'll agree to anything you ask to. The third prince wants to rebel. Oh, rebellion too, I nodded, and was about to say I knew, but suddenly realized that something seemed wrong. He just seemed to have said the word rebellion, right? Rebellion. I underestimated you, third brother. I didn't expect you to do such a big thing. But how did you know that the third brother wanted to rebel? I asked Mu Yunjong with a puzzled look. I dreamed about it. Mu Yunjong blinked, his eyes clear and innocent. Oh, it turns out that good-looking people have premonitions when they dream. Mu Yunjong, listen to yourself, is what you said reasonable? I looked at him speechlessly. Okay, that's what I guessed. After a pause, he continued with a serious expression. Anyway, you should stay away from him from today, and stay away from the other princes as well. Why, are the other royal brothers going to rebel too? I am the sixth child, with 4 older brothers and 1 older sister. In addition to my eldest brother who died early and my second sister who married far away, I have 3 older brothers. But looking at the entire royal family, I am the only legitimate princess, and my mother's family is strong, and my father and mother love me, so I can almost walk sideways in the palace and no one dares to stop me. Although the mother of the third prince is a favorite concubine, she is of humble origin, so he has always been the one to please me. But I have to go to the 4th prince's house to attend the lotus banquet the day after tomorrow, which has been promised. The 4th prince's mother is concubine Ying, who is good friends with my mother, so I have had the best relationship with the 4th prince since I was a child. I'll go with you. Mu Yinjong said immediately. What's wrong with you? I watched his face change when he heard lotus banquet. You are not well yet, just stay at home. Didn't you never like to participate in such activities before? Don't worry, I will be careful. Besides, isn't there the 4th prince? Alas, Yinjong is very worried. Maybe he had a nightmare after falling into the water just now, so he said this nonsense now. It's okay, I feel much better now. I heard that the lotus in the 4th prince's mansion is blooming well. I also want to go with you to see it. He seemed to be afraid that I would disagree, and deliberately squeezed my hand. Oh, then okay, if you want to follow, follow. I couldn't stand him. Alas, Yinjong is very clingy to I was still coaxing. Yinjong on this side, and my personal maid Su Hua hurried in on the other side. Your Highness, why did you bring the little prince back? Little prince? Mu Yinjong's eyes suddenly changed when he heard it, and he looked at me with a complicated look and a hint of resentment. I didn't, it's not me. I was shocked by this look, and immediately denied 3 times, then turned to look at Su Hua. Who is it? Whose child is it? Su Hua, don't slander your princess innocence for no reason. Your Highness, the little prince I'm talking about is the little grandson of the emperor. Su Hua said helplessly, and then I saw the little guy who came in behind her. The thin and small body seemed to be only half as tall as Su Hua. The outer shirt on the body seemed to be not very suitable, and the fabric looked a little old. Looking up, it was a slightly childish face. Although it had not grown up yet, it inexplicably overlapped with another face in my memory. You are the child of the eldest brother. I remembered it immediately. My eldest brother died young, and he didn't even have time to marry a wife. I remember that he seemed to have a posthumous child. His mother was a little palace maid who died of dystocia during childbirth. The child was not in good health after birth and rarely attended palace activities, so I didn't see him much. Calculating his age, he should be 8 or 9 years old now. But how can a child of 8 or 9 years old be so thin? Just now, I went to ask someone to move the coral tree from the carriage, but when I opened the curtain, I saw the little prince hiding behind it. I have sent someone to deliver a letter to the palace. Su Hua explained. When the little guy behind her saw me, his eyes lit up immediately, and the next second, tears filled his eyes, and he rushed towards me quickly. What's wrong? Did some blind palace servants bully you? Seeing this, I opened my hands distressedly, intending to give the little guy a loving hug. The palace servants always flatter the powerful and bully the weak. This child has been fatherless since childhood, and his mother died of complications during childbirth. I'm afraid he has been bullied by the palace servants. Now he is so wronged that he secretly climbed onto my carriage and followed me out. I guess he wants me to support him. Forget it, he is also a poor child. After all, he is my nephew. It doesn't matter if I love him. Uncle. The little guy cried and passed by me like a gust of wind and threw himself into Mu Yinzhong's arms behind me. I was trying to prove my innocence just now. My hands that had been stretched out seemed particularly awkward at this moment. I gave my boss an awkward smile and silently retracted my hands, pretending that nothing happened. It's okay. The palace gates are probably about to close. Send someone to inform them that the little grandson will stay at the princess mansion tonight. I'll send someone to take him back tomorrow. By the way, remember to inform the kitchen to add a few lighter dishes tonight and prepare some cakes that children like. Yes, Your Highness. Su Hua left considerately and closed the door before leaving. I turned around and looked at the two people who were affectionate like real father and son. Their eyes were more complicated than the eyes that Mu Yinzhong looked at me just now. Tell me, when did you get so close to the eldest brother's child behind my back? How could someone who rarely went to the palace on weekdays get such a good relationship with the little grandson who lived in the palace? No, I am innocent. Mu Yinzhong stretched out his hands, letting me see that it was the little guy who was hugging him tightly unilaterally, and then looked at me innocently. I am not familiar with this child, really. Hearing this, the little guy looked up with a shocked face. Uncle. However, Mu Yinzhong was not panicked at all. Instead, he broke the little guy's hands holding him, pulled the distance between the two, and asked seriously, "You little kid, why did you hug me and cry as soon as you came up?" The little guy was stunned. I. His eyes were sharp. The little guy stopped talking. I walked up and saw that he was scared and crying. Oh, okay, if you don't know him, then you don't know him. Why are you scaring a child? Seeing this, I immediately hugged the little guy in my arms with heartache. Okay, don't cry, little crybaby. Hearing this, the little guy cried even harder. I'm not a crybaby. Okay, I'm not a crybaby, I'm just a little stutterer. The poor child couldn't even speak clearly. WAA. This time he really cried loudly. I looked at Mu Yinzhong for help. He sighed helplessly, came over and held the little guy in his arms. Okay, uncle is here, he said while reaching out and patting the little guy's head gently. Uncle. Is it the uncle I know? The little guy raised his head and looked at Mu Yinzhong with tears in his eyes. I don't know what he was talking about. How many uncles can you have? Mu Yinzhong was amused, turned his head and looked at me, and said meaningfully, unless your aunt doesn't want me, I will always be your uncle. I was caught off guard and was stunned by his words. Why don't you say anything? Mu Yinzhong looked dissatisfied, staring at me, with a hint of coquettishness in his tone. Ping, you won't give up on me, right? Of course I will. After I realized what was going on, I couldn't help laughing. How could you give up on such a handsome prince consort? How could I give up on you if I like you so much? Because the little guy liked Yinzhong very much, I was just going to take this opportunity to punish the palace maids who took care of him, so I sent someone to send a letter back, saying that he should stay in the princess mansion for a few more days. So one day later, I showed up with two burdens, one big and one small, at the flower viewing banquet held at the fourth prince's residence. Oh, Jinshu is here. The fourth prince, who was welcoming guests at the door, saw me, raised his eyebrows, and said with a smile, "You're here with your family today." The fourth prince, Songqi, was born to concubine Ye. The Yun family is a scholarly family. Many contemporary great scholars were born in the ancestors. The fourth prince also inherited the scholarly atmosphere of the Yun family. He has been the best among the princes since he was a child. My full name is Song Jinshu. People close to me always call me by my nickname Ping. Only my best brother, the fourth prince, always calls me by my full name. The fourth prince is hosting a banquet, and I will definitely come to join in the fun, I said with a smile, and I saw his eyes fall on the little burden beside him, with a curious tone. I remember that you and your brother-in-law seem to have been married for only a year. Where did this child come from? Fourth brother, you must be dreaming. I stretched out my hand and pulled the little burden in front of him so that he could see the face clearly. This is the child of the eldest brother. Hello, fourth uncle. The little guy who was crying before was very steady today. He bowed respectfully to the fourth prince and said word by word, Junior Song Ling, named Yang Hoi. The fourth prince seemed a little surprised. He looked at Song Yang Hoi seriously for a few times, and then sighed, he's so big. Isn't it? This child gets along well with Yunzhong. I deliberately let him stay in the princess mansion for a few more days, I said with a smile, and turned to look at Mu Yinzhong beside me. I saw that he was staring at the fourth prince. I don't know what he was thinking, and his eyes were a little cold. What's wrong? I asked him worriedly, are you feeling unwell? Nothing. Mu Yinzhong shook his head, and smiled as if nothing had happened. Maybe it's been too long since I last saw the fourth prince. I feel he has changed a lot. Really? I subconsciously glanced at Songqi. He was chatting with Song Yanghui, asking about his homework. His expression was gentle, and he looked no different from before. However, Yinzhong was the fourth prince's study partner when he was young, and he had always had a good relationship with the fourth prince, but after the Mu family got into trouble, the War Marquis mansion declined, and the two of them reduced their contacts, and now it's really been a long time since we last saw each other. After thinking about it, I whispered, "It's okay, you just follow me today, there are many guests today, and the fourth prince is probably busy, I'm afraid he won't be able to catch up with you." As soon as I finished speaking, Song Chi was called away, and before leaving, he praised Song Yang-hoi's homework. But even when praised by the elders, Song Yang-hoi just nodded, not looking very happy. I looked at Song Yang-hoi, who was walking back, and asked with a smile, "Yang-hoi, do you want to go to the lake? The lotus flowers in your fourth uncle's house are blooming beautifully." Today, many guests came to the fourth prince's house. The fourth prince has a gentle temperament and his maternal grandfather Yin family is well known. Whenever his house holds a banquet, there are many people coming. Today, many children of about the same age as Song Yang-hui also came to the banquet. If you go to the lake with your peers, you may make a few friends. "Thank you, aunt, no need, I don't like lake cruises." Song Yang-hui shook his head. "Then, do you want to have some snacks?" I continued to ask. "Thank you, aunt, Yang-hui is not hungry." Song Yang-hui refused again. "What about pitching pots? I see a lot of kids playing in the back garden." "Thank you, auntie. Yang-hui is not good at pitching pots, so I won't show off." "TSK, this kid is not good at it. Why is he so introverted?" "It's okay. Auntie is good at pitching pots. Come on, auntie will teach you." After saying that, I took his hand and walked towards the backyard. "Uncle." He subconsciously looked at Mu Yinjong for help. Mu Yinjong raised his eyebrows. "Your auntie is right. Listen to your auntie and have fun." "Hey, little guy, you thought complaining would work?" Unexpectedly, Mu Yinjong listens to me in everything. I happily took the child to the back garden of the fourth prince's mansion, but I ran into two acquaintances as soon as I arrived. "Oh, Ping Ping and her brother-in-law are here too." The third prince Song Yu looked at me and smiled brightly. However, before I could reply, the person next to him saw Mu Yinjong next to me and sneered. "Since when did our sickly son-in-law like to go out and join in the fun? I heard that you fell into the water the day before yesterday. Why don't you stay at home and take care of yourself?" The greeting on my lips suddenly changed direction. I rolled my eyes, thinking why this guy still didn't give up, and said rudely, "Xiaosheng, you can keep silent if you can't speak, but you can do it with your little mouth." The ancestors of the Xiao family had the merit of following the dragon, and they were the kings of different surnames, personally appointed by the Taizor. The prince Xiaosheng was the same age as Mu Yinjong. When I just came of age, the Jingnao palace proposed marriage to the palace. After being rejected by my mother, Xiaosheng still didn't give up and pestered me for a year. Until something happened to the Mu family, I was worried that Mu Yinzhou would be bullied by others with his younger brother, so I said on the surface that I wanted to get rid of Xiao Shou's entanglement and proposed to get engaged to him. Mu Yinzhong agreed to me under the pressure of the situation. Since then, Xiao Sheng began to dislike Mu Yinzhong in various ways. Speaking of which, if he hadn't been so persistent, I wouldn't have found a reason to propose to Mu Yinzhong for an engagement. I immediately felt that he looked a little more pleasing to the eye. Am I wrong? You left a young talent like me and married such a poor and sickly man whose parents had both passed away. I really doubt whether he had given you some kind of magic potion. Xiao Shou's mouth seemed to be blessed. I was very angry on the surface, but my heart was beating fast. Good fellow, you guessed it all, didn't you? I was just being magicked by him. You guessed it right, don't guess it again. What Xiao Shize said is not right. I was about to refute, but Mu Yinzhou, who always didn't like to argue with others, answered before me. Can't Yinzhou be more handsome and be more pleasing to the princess than Xiao Shize? I looked back at Mu Yinzhou in a daze, and even began to wonder if he was confused after falling into the water the day before yesterday. Not only me, but the other three people were also the same, all looking at him in a daze. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Mu Yinzhou met my gaze and smiled seductively. After all, as Xiao Shize said, Yinzhou's parents are both dead, and he is a sickly person. The current Warren Marquis mansion is not as good as the Jingnao Prince mansion. The reason why Yinzhou can become a son-in-law is nothing more than relying on this face and the relationship with the princess as childhood sweethearts. This Yinzhong is right. I nodded and agreed. Isn't it? You are relying on your good looks to light up my heart. You. Mu Yinzhong, don't be so proud. Xiao Sheng obviously didn't expect that Mu Yinzhong, who was always gentle and kind, had this side. He was so angry, but he couldn't think of anything to refute. After all, before the Mu family got into trouble, everyone in the capital didn't know that the eldest son of the Marquis of War Mansion was outstanding in appearance, proficient in poetry and songs, and was no less than the fourth prince. Such a brilliant figure, even if he was in poor health, would only make people sigh that God is jealous of talents. If it weren't for the Mu family's trouble later, I'm afraid that the matchmakers who came to propose marriage would have broken through the door. Okay. In the end, it was the third prince Song Yu who came out to smooth things over. I think what Yinzhong said makes sense. He and Jin Shu are childhood sweethearts and they love each other. Sheng, you don't have to be too angry. What they said is also true. Thank you, third brother, for your good advice. Xiao Shou was not mad at Mu Yinzhong, but he was almost mad at you. Seeing Song Yu winking at me imperceptibly, I knew he was trying to show me goodwill again. Recalling what Mu Yunzhou said to me the day before yesterday, I hesitated for a moment, but still pretended not to see it and looked away. My mother told me a long time ago that the Central Palace should not participate in party disputes. My maternal grandfather's family is strong. If my mother had not given birth to a legitimate son for many years, I am afraid that my father would not be so fond of me. Not participating in party disputes, not favoring any prince, with my maternal grandfather's family as a backer, no matter who comes to power in the future, it will not shake the position of the Central Palace. The same is true for my engagement with Mu Yinzhong. If the Mu family had not been in trouble, I am afraid that I would never have any intersection with him in my life. The Mu family was born as a military general and held military power. If it weren't for the death of Wu Marquis and his wife, leaving the eldest son Mu Yunzhou in poor health and the younger brother Mu Yangshan born blind, my father would have been able to completely let down his guard. The marriage of the eldest son of Wu Marquis Mansion to Princess Shang, and the special exception of Mu Yangshan, who was born blind, was the last dignity of Wu Marquis Mansion. It was also an unspoken agreement between Mu Yinzhong and me. This marriage was a matter of mutual needs from the beginning, but for me, it was the fulfillment of a long-term secret love dream. Mu Yinzhong and I knew each other when we were young and had been childhood sweethearts for many years. I thought I knew him very well, but I was still shocked by his words today. This doesn't seem to be the Mu Yinzhong in my memory. With this suspicion, I was still thinking about it on the way back after the banquet. It wasn't until the sky outside gradually darkened and the carriage had been driving for a long time without reaching the princess mansion, I realized something was wrong. It's not like I haven't been to the fourth prince's mansion before. It usually takes only half an hour to get there. How come the carriage hasn't arrived today after so long? And I noticed that the noise outside seemed to be getting quieter and quieter since just now. The road from the fourth prince's mansion to the princess mansion is the prosperous area of the capital. Even if it's late now, it shouldn't be so quiet. Something's wrong, very wrong. I subconsciously looked at Mu Yinzhong and saw him looking at the direction of the carriage door with a dark look on his face. Yinzhong. I was afraid of scaring the child, so I reached out to cover Song Yanghui's ears beside me and whispered, "Why do I feel like this is not the way back to the princess mansion?" I didn't say the rest of the words, but I knew Mu Yinzhong must understand what I meant. This is not the way back to the princess mansion. We were held hostage, and the carriage was heading in a sparsely populated direction, so it was so quiet. Ping ping. Mu Yinzhong spoke, calling my name softly, then turned and looked at me, his eyes more serious than ever before. "No matter what happens, no matter what you hear or see, don't leave the carriage. Understand?" "Why? What happened?" Before the rest of the words were finished, the carriage suddenly stopped, and the surroundings suddenly fell into a dead silence. "Yang Hui, protect your aunt." Mu Yinzhong took a last look at me, and before I could react, he pushed open the carriage door and got out. "Yinzhong." I let go of the hand covering Song Yanghui's ear and wanted to pull him, but Song Yanghui grabbed my hands, his thin body, but his strength was amazing. "Don't go, aunt," he said seriously. "Uncle hopes you'll be fine. But your uncle has gone down. He's so weak, he doesn't know martial arts, how can he go down alone? What if something happens to him?" Seeing the sound of fighting outside, I was so anxious that tears were about to fall, and I was so angry that I couldn't help talking. "You kid, how can you be so heartless? Your uncle treats you so well, and you have the heart to let him die." "It's because my uncle treats me well." Song Yanghui suddenly raised his voice, his hands still holding me tightly, his eyes as firm as a wolf cub. "It's because my uncle treats me well, so aunt, you can't get into trouble. My uncle would rather get into trouble himself than you, so aunt, just think of it as feeling sorry for my uncle, don't go down, and don't die." As his voice fell, I stopped struggling, looking at him in surprise and helplessness. "Why do you say that?" The tone of this child. How come it seems as if he knows that something will happen after I go down? However, now is not the time to think about these things. After calming down, I quickly took off my gorgeous and complicated outer clothes to make it easier for me to move, then opened the secret compartment on the carriage and took out a delicate and small crossbow from it. This is the birthday gift that Mu Yinzhong gave me when I was a 15-year-old. At that time, the Mu family had not had any trouble, and Mu Yinzhong was still the eldest young master of the Wu Marquis mansion. In his spare time, he liked to make some woodworking and mechanisms. That year when I was a 15-year-old, my father held a banquet for the court officials to show his love for me. Xiao Sheng came to celebrate my birthday and gave me an unsharpened dagger. The handle of the dagger was carved from the finest white jade, and a huge ruby was inlaid on the end of the handle. It was exquisitely made and small, very suitable for women to play with. Xiao Sheng looked at me and said with a smile, "Because your highness is delicate, I am afraid that you may hurt yourself, so this dagger is not sharpened, your highness can play with it in your hand without worry." At that time, I was worried about marriage. After a woman reaches the age of 15, she can get married. Even as a noble princess, she cannot decide her own marriage. The final result is nothing more than being betrothed to someone else. But that other person will not be Mu Yinzhong. So Xiao Sheng's words fell into my ears, as if to imply that I was just like this dagger. No matter how beautiful or precious it is just flashy. It cannot hurt people, and it is just a plaything after all. That was the first time I lost my composure in front of everyone. When Mu Yinzhou found me behind the rockery in the Imperial Garden afterwards, I was hiding in a corner and crying secretly. Mu Yinzhou saw the tears on my face, was stunned for a moment, then took out a handkerchief and gently wiped my tears. Princess, I have a gift for you. What is it? I cried and looked at his other hand. I opened the box and found a small and exquisite crossbow. I made it myself. Mu Yinzhong wiped the last trace of tears from my face, and then said gently, "It is a weapon suitable for you and can be used. Why did you give this to me?" I didn't say the rest of the words. I looked at the crossbow in his hand and found it hard to look away. There were no complicated and gorgeous carvings, nor beautiful gems inlaid. It was just such a handmade crossbow, but I loved it at first sight. Most of the noble ladies in the capital are weak and can't do martial arts or riding and shooting. Mu Yinzhong slowly explained, "But Ping Ping, you are a princess, you are different from others." My heart trembled suddenly, and I looked at him blankly. Ping Ping is my nickname. In theory, a girl should be given a nickname after she reaches the age of 15, but my father loves me so much that he gave me a nickname early on. But this is the first time that Mu Yinzhong calls me by my nickname. I give you a crossbow in the hope that it can keep you safe. Although I know that there are tens of millions of people around you who are willing to risk their lives to protect you at all times, I hope that you can protect yourself. Ping Ping, the identity of a princess has never been a flashy shackle. You should live more noble and more wanton than anyone else, so that you can live up to your identity as a legitimate princess. You were born to be high and mighty. As the voice in the memory fell, the sound of fighting outside the carriage gradually became smaller. The moment the carriage door was opened, I quickly raised the crossbow in my hand, aimed it at the door, and pressed my finger on the switch. Ping Ping, it's me. I looked at Mu Yinzhong outside the carriage. His clothes were a lot messier than before, with a few drops of blood on them. I don't know if it was his or someone else's. He was slightly stunned when he saw the crossbow in my hand, and then he laughed. I was scared to death. I cried without caring about my image. How can you be so brave? What if something happens to you? Do you want me to be a widow, Mu Yinzhong? I'm sorry, Ping Ping, I was wrong. I don't know if it was my illusion, but Mu Yinzhong's tone was more scared than mine. He hugged me tightly, as if he was holding a treasure that was lost and found. There won't be a next time, Ping Ping, as long as you are okay, as long as you are okay. Whoa whoa whoa, Mu Yinzhong, you bastard, I don't want to be a widow. Wah ah ah. I cried so hard that I didn't notice that there seemed to be many more people outside the carriage. It was not until Song Yanhui, who could not bear to watch any more, tugged at my sleeve that I stopped crying. After rubbing Mu Yinzhong's chest twice, I looked outside with tears in my eyes. Oh my goodness, I had to look. Where did all these people come from? I was stunned, and my eyes slowly fell on the leader. Yeah, it was still an acquaintance. Yingshan has met the princess sister-in-law. Is she okay? The young marquis, who was born blind, had an inch-wide white satin covering his eyes. When he heard the crying finally stop, he looked at me with a worried expression. The little maid who had been following him saw this, tiptoed and whispered something in his ear, and he smiled with relief. So that's it. Yingshan was worried that he didn't come in time and hurt his sister-in-law. I hope she's okay. How could she be okay? So many people were watching me crying. Do I still want my princess image? Mu Yinzhong. I glared at Mu Yinzhong fiercely. If I still didn't understand what happened, I would be a fool. You knew that you would be assassinated, so you had to follow me today, and even notified the people of War Marquis Mansion to ambush in advance, just to catch the other party off guard, right? I was so worried just now. War Marquis Mansion is a military general after all, and each of the guards in the mansion can fight 10 people at once. Mu Yongshan got the news from his brother in advance, and he led people to prepare early, and even captured several assassins alive. After calming down, I looked at the assassins tied up on the ground and fell into deep thought. In broad daylight, under the feet of the emperor, he dared to assassinate the noble princess. The other party must be either daring or not ordinary. Familiar faces flashed through my mind for a while, and finally fixed on the 2 people I met during the day. There are only 2 people who have the courage and ability to do this. The 3rd prince, Song Yu, and the 4th prince Song Qi. Although there is a 5th prince under these 2, the 5th prince has always been obsessed with music. In addition, his biological mother died early and his mother's family is just a small wealthy businessman. Even if he is given 10 courage, he can't do such a thing. So the person who dares to assassinate me can only be one of Song Yu and Song Qi, but in my heart, I don't want that person to be the 4th prince Song Yi. It was dark when I returned to the princess mansion. I sent someone to the palace to deliver a letter while my heart was in a mess. Is this the beginning? But why am I the first one to be eliminated in the party struggle? I am just a princess. Even if I am the legitimate daughter of the central palace, I am not a threat to them. Ping Ping, go back to your room and rest for a while. I will go to interrogate the assassin and come back soon. Mu Yingzhou said to me in a normal tone after helping me get off the carriage. Oh, okay. I didn't think too much and took Song Yanhui back to the backyard. What is your aunt worried about? Song Yanhui looked up at me. I'm thinking. After a pause, I looked at the flowers outside the corridor and murmured, I'm thinking, what are my brothers thinking? What are they thinking that would make them attack me, their sister? Aunt, there is no family affection in the royal family. Except for your majesty and the queen, other uncles may harm you. When Song Yang-hoi said this, the maturity in his tone was not like a 7 or 8-year-old child at all. But after a pause, he suddenly blinked his eyes and said with a smile, "Of course, there is also your uncle, and he will never harm you." I was amused by him. "You are a child, you will only speak for your uncle. Yang Hoi is telling the truth." "Yes, of course I know. In this world, in addition to my biological parents, there is another person who will never harm me. His name is Mu Yinjong." That night, I slept very restlessly. I seemed to have had a dream in a daze. When I woke up from the dream, it was still dark outside the window. I subconsciously reached out my hand, but there was no one beside me. I only touched the cold quilt. Recalling the scene in the dream just now, I felt very uncomfortable in my heart, and tears fell uncontrollably. The scenes in the dream seemed to be still in front of me, and the grey memories made me almost breathless. Was it really a dream? I wiped my tears casually, got up and put on a coat. I was about to go out for a breath of fresh air, but I accidentally disturbed the maid who was guarding outside the door. "Your Highness, what's wrong? Do you have any instructions?" "Nothing, I can't sleep, I'm going to the garden, you don't have to follow me, go back to sleep." After dismissing the servants, I lit a lantern and walked towards the garden alone. I remember that there was such a person in the dream. Whenever he couldn't sleep at midnight, he would light a lantern alone and go to the garden. What's in the garden? There are the hydrangeas that I planted with my own hands the year we got married. There is the lotus lake where he accidentally fell into the water that afternoon. And the sweet-scented osmunthus tree that I love the most every autumn. The reason I prefer that sweet-scented osmunthus tree is not because it is so precious, but because every autumn, I can use the sweet-scented osmunthus flowers picked from this tree to brew a few cans of sweet and fragrant sweet-scented osmunthus honey. Soak it in water and let him drink it, so that his cough will get better. How could my sickly prince consort know that this is the reason why I planted the sweet-scented osmunthus tree? Walking to the bottom of the sweet-scented osmunthus tree, I looked at the shadow of the lush branches and leaves on the ground, thinking that the sweet-scented osmunthus should bloom well this year. Ping ping. A familiar voice suddenly came from behind. "It's so late, why are you here alone?" I turned around and looked at him. Under the moonlight, the man's handsome face still had a trace of imperceptible fatigue. When he looked at me with worry, I found that I couldn't control my tears again. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't say a word. "What's wrong?" Seeing that I was in a bad mood, Mu Yinjong hurriedly walked up to me and hugged me in his arms. "But did what happened during the day scare you?" "It's my fault. I should have accompanied you to sleep first." He hugged me and coaxed softly, "Our Ping Ping is still a little girl who needs to be loved." The tone was full of tenderness and pampering. Mu Yinjong. I buried my head in his arms and called out his name with a choked voice. Feeling the sound of his heartbeat in my ears, I finally understood where the feeling of loss and recovery came from when he hugged me tightly after the accident today. "Why didn't you remarry?" I heard my choked voice say this. The person holding me was stunned, then lowered his head and looked at me in shock. Ping Ping. I met his eyes, and I saw myself in his eyes. It was me with messy hair, red eyes, and crying uncontrollably. "Why didn't you remarry after I died?" I knew Mu Yinjong when I was a child. At that time, he was still the fourth brother's study companion. At a banquet, I got separated from the fourth brother. The road was slippery in winter, and I accidentally fell into the lake. It was the coldest time of the year. In order to facilitate viewing, the lake in the palace was brought in fresh water from outside the city. I fell into the lake and felt the coldness in an instant. My hands, which were still struggling, soon lost their strength. When I was rescued to the shore, I was almost frozen to the point of losing consciousness. The person holding me wasn't much better either. He was shivering with cold, but he still held me tightly in his arms. "Yinjong." I heard the nervous voice of my fourth brother from a distance, followed by a burst of hurried footsteps. I opened my eyes in a daze, and just at this moment, the dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and a ray of warm winter sun shone down, shining a clear light on the person holding me above. It was my fourth brother's companion, the eldest son of the Marquis of Wu'er Mansion, Mu Yinjong. His teeth were chattering with cold, but when he saw me open my eyes, he still smiled at me with pursed lips. "Princess, it's okay." As soon as the voice fell, I fainted. When I woke up again, I was lying in my mother's palace, next to the imperial physician who was checking my pulse and my mother who looked anxious. Seeing me wake up, my mother was very happy, and quickly helped me up and fed me a few sips of warm water, and asked me if I was still feeling uncomfortable. "Where's my brother?" I asked hoarsely. "Don't worry, your fourth brother is fine. He's worried about you and has been waiting outside for a long time." My mother thought I was asking about the fourth prince, so she quickly sent someone to call him in. No. I couldn't say much. I felt that my throat hurt every time I said a word, but I was worried about that young man, so I endured the pain and continued to ask, "Brother Yinjong, is he okay? Mu Yinjong, who saved me, is he okay?" My mother looked at the imperial physician, and the imperial physician retreated. Only then did my mother look at me and sighed. "The child was originally weak, and he jumped into the lake to save you. It was the cold winter weather and the lake water was so cold. Not long after he sent you back, he fainted and is still running a high fever. My eyes suddenly turned red, and I felt extremely uncomfortable and guilty. It was no secret that Mu Yinzhong was not in good health. I knew it from the first day he came to the palace to be a companion to the fourth prince. No matter when, his face always looked paler than others. Whenever the fourth prince went to the riding and archery class, he, who could not ride a horse, would sit aside and carve a piece of wood. Once I secretly hid in the corner to watch him, and saw that he was skilled in his hands and carved a little rabbit in a short while. I was itching to see it, and unconsciously took 2 steps towards him. Unexpectedly, he suddenly turned his head and looked at me with a smile that saw through everything on his face. "Princess, do you want it?" I was startled, but then I thought, I am a noble princess. So I raised my little face and pretended to be indifferent. "Do you want to give me the little rabbit?" "Okay, then I will accept it." As I said that, I wanted to reach out and take it. Oh, no, he was only 3 years older than me, but he was a full head taller than me. He could easily lift his hand up and I couldn't reach it. I looked up at him angrily, and just when I was about to speak, he smiled at me brightly. "Princess, call me Brother Yunzhou, and I will give you the little rabbit. How about that?" "How about that?" "Not so much. I have been favored since I was a child, and I have never suffered such grievances. I think I don't want to call him that, but what can I do?" "Princess, call me Brother Yunzhou, and you will not only get a little rabbit, but also a kitten, a puppy, and a duck. I can carve out whatever you want for you." Damn, I was severely controlled. Brother Yunzhou. I called reluctantly, and got a happy response from Mu Yinzhong. "Hey, princess sister." He smiled and handed the little rabbit in his hand to me. "You can tell me anything you want in the future. Maybe the afternoon sun was too warm." That day, or the little rabbit carved from wood was too cute, I slowly let down my guard and started chatting with him. I was like a happy little sparrow, chirping from eating a few snacks at noon, to talking about the beautiful skirts newly made by my mother, and then to which corner of the imperial garden had the most beautiful hydrangeas. It was not until the fourth brother came back from riding and shooting that I found that I and his companion had played together. "You are good at picking people. Only Yinzhong has a good temper and can listen to you nagging for an afternoon." Having said that, the fourth brother smiled and rubbed my head, his eyes full of pampering. I was about to say that I didn't bully him, he volunteered, and I heard Mu Yinzhong say with a smile, "Your Highness the princess is very cute." He praised me for being cute. I snorted at the fourth brother proudly, and even my eyes were a little proud. "You see, I said he volunteered." It was after that time that I became familiar with Mu Yinzhong. I knew he was the eldest son of the Wu'er Marquis mansion, that he had a younger brother who was born blind, that he had been in poor health since birth and needed to be taken care of, and that he was particularly fond of woodworking and machinery because he could not ride a horse or shoot arrows, and was especially good at crossbows. But such a person jumped into the lake in the cold winter weather to save me. After that, his health became even worse. I felt guilty, so I always treated him well when he entered the palace, so well that even the fourth brother was jealous. It was not until the news of the death of Wu'er Marquis and his wife in the battle came that I hurried to Wu'er Marquis mansion and happened to encounter the relics of Wu'er Marquis and his wife being transported back. I watched Mu Yinzhou holding his younger brother's hand, looking at his parents' relics in front of him with red eyes, biting his lower lip tightly. Brother Yinzhou. I didn't know how to comfort him. At this time, it seems that nothing can be said. Ping. He looked at me with extremely sad eyes, but he held back his tears, not daring to let them fall. I will no longer have a father or mother. God is always so cruel. Such a good Mu Yinzhou, but fate did not treat him well. I hugged Mu Yinzhong tightly, thinking back to the things in my dream just now, and I felt so distressed that I couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you marry? Again? Why am I alone? Why do I always walk to the garden alone when I can't sleep in the middle of the night, staring blankly at this almond tree? I have so many doubts, but when I open my mouth, I only feel distressed." Ping. Why do you ask that? Mu Yinzhong looked at me, his voice trembling. "Mu Yinzhong, I just had a nightmare." Taking a deep breath, I would rather everything I saw just now was just a nightmare. In my dream, I was murdered on my way back from the Lotus Feast. When I said the last sentence, I clearly felt Mu Yinzhou's hand tightening slightly. "But after I died, you didn't remarry, but stayed alone in the princess mansion. My ghost is trapped in the princess mansion. When I see you sleepless every night, you will come to see this almond tree." I looked into his eyes. His eyes were complicated, with surprise, tension, and many things I couldn't understand. "Why didn't you remarry?" "Obviously, our marriage was just a transaction that each of us needed. Obviously, I thought that this relationship was just my wishful thinking from beginning to end. But in my dream, after I died, Mu Yinzhou was always alone. Eating alone, sleeping alone, lighting a lantern and coming to the garden alone, spending countless long nights." Ping, what are you talking about? Mu Yinzhong finally seemed to accept the reality, sighed, and looked at me with a helpless smile. "I want to ask you, did you have a nightmare? What did you see? Answer my question first." I looked at him fiercely. "Why didn't you remarry?" It was so deep in my dream. My ghost was trapped in the princess mansion, watching Mu Yinzhong spend 7 years here alone. I felt sorry for his loneliness, surprised at his changes, and wondered why he didn't remarry, but apart from all this, when I knew that he had never remarried, I felt a little excited in my heart. Yes, what you said makes sense, but... After a pause, he looked away and looked at the shadow under the osmonthus tree. But if that's the case, I have a guilty conscience. I have a guilty conscience. One sentence made my eyes red again. But he continued, I know that you proposed to get engaged to me not only to get rid of Xiaoshuo's pursuit, but also because you are afraid that after my parents died, the Warrior Marquis mansion would fall into decline, and Yoshen and I would be bullied by others without a father or a mother. I also know that you are worried about my health and don't want me to work too hard, so you always go along with me, support me, and protect the entire Warrior Marquis mansion, so that Yingshan, the Warrior Marquis, will not be looked down upon by others. The more he spoke, the gentler his voice became. At the end, he turned his head and looked at me again, and there seemed to be a little starlight in his eyes. You said, how can I betray such a good song, Jingshu? How dare I betray her? But... I was stunned by what he said, and I had to repeat what I just said in a murmured tone, but our engagement was originally fake. I know, but I took it seriously. At this point, he suddenly became righteous again. You can say I took advantage of the situation or I went with the flow. Anyway, since His Majesty personally granted the marriage and we are married, we are husband and wife. After saying that, he looked at me and smiled again. Ping Ping, you may not believe it, but I actually like you more than you think. I can't sleep. Song Jingshu, you are useless. Isn't it just a secret love that has come true for many years? You are a princess. The most noble woman in the whole capital. Isn't it just Mu Yinzhong? Wait, it seems that the word just cannot be used to describe Mu Yinzhong. That is Mu Yinzhong, who has been gifted since childhood, proficient in poetry and songs, and even if he is physically deficient, he is still as sharp as the fourth prince. Mu Yinzhong is good-looking, has a good temper, and can carve little rabbits for me. I, Song Jingshu, have been doing good deeds all my life. Although I am a princess, I have never done anything bad and have never hurt anyone. So I deserve such a good Mu Yinzhong. That's right. What are you thinking about? Mu Yinzhong suddenly leaned forward. You, stay away from me first. He suddenly leaned so close, is he trying to bump into my heart? I immediately moved inside, and fortunately the bed was big enough, there was still extra space for two people to sleep. This is just a moment of mutual understanding. It's fine if you said you want to sleep in the same bed, but you don't get so close all of a sudden. If you get so close now, will you kiss me in the next second? No, you have to be reserved. As I thought so, I subconsciously looked at Mu Yinzhong's thin lips, which were slightly lighter in color. I don't know what it feels like to kiss him. Reserve. Why are you blushing? Mu Yinzhong smiled at me, his beautiful thin lips opening and closing, looking even more attractive. It's nothing, I'm just a little hot. I said while covering up by lifting the quilt a little. It was hot in summer, and I only wore a white nightgown when I went to bed. The fabric was also thin and breathable, so when I lifted the quilt at this time, it looked a little disheveled. I was in a dilemma whether to cover it or not. Mu Yinzhong still looked at me with a smile, but his eyes began to darken when his eyes fell to the collar. Brother Yinzhong. I hesitated for a long time and finally made up my mind. Can you kiss me? Woo, sorry, but the child has been greedy for a long time. Since we are husband and wife, and since we are in tune with each other, it shouldn't be a big deal to kiss, right? The child has already called me brother, so just give him a kiss. Thinking this way, I found that I couldn't help but say the last sentence of my inner thoughts. Well, Ping makes sense. Mu Yinzhong pretended to think for a while and nodded seriously. Brother Yinzhong also thinks that good children should have their own rewards. Then, there was a little expectation in my eyes. And then I was eaten up. Brother Yinzhong. Whoa, wait a minute. Good child, relax. Aunt is not feeling well today. Song Yang-hoi suddenly said at lunch the next day. No, what's wrong? I was startled and looked at him with a guilty look while holding the bowl. Yang-hoi wanted to go to my aunt to have breakfast this morning, but my uncle said you were still sleeping. But I clearly remember that my aunt has never slept late since Yang-hoi moved to the princess mansion. As he said this, he subconsciously glanced at Mu Yinzhong, then looked at me, and suddenly realized. Oh, Yang-hoi understands. What do you understand? You don't understand. You are not allowed to understand. No. Aunt must have been scared yesterday, so she didn't sleep well at night, right? Uncle is the same, he was only concerned with interrogating the assassin and didn't comfort Aunt properly. After saying this, Song Yang-hoi looked at me in confusion. What did Aunt say, no just now? No, it's incredible, you guessed it all. The words that were about to come out of my mouth suddenly turned around, and I picked up a chicken leg and put it in Song Yang-hoi's bowl with a smile, and felt that the ups and downs of life were just like this. Ah, Yang-hoi really knows how to care. For Aunt. Song Yang-hoi picked up the chicken leg with a smile and took a bite, saying, thank you, Aunt. Originally, the topic could have ended here. But someone couldn't help showing off. Mu Yinzhong put down the bowl of porridge, glanced at Song Yang-hoi, and chuckled, how do you know that I didn't comfort your aunt well? Based on my understanding of my uncle, he must have interrogated her until the second half of the night. Song Yang-hoi looked at Mu Yin-jong with certainty. Aunt was asleep at that time. Didn't aunt and uncle always sleep in separate rooms? Could it be that uncle went to aunt's room in the middle of the night and woke her up to comfort her? Humph, sleeping in separate rooms was in the past. Mu Yin-jong said this, and there was a little bit of smugness in his usually calm eyes. Since last night, your aunt and I have been sleeping in the same bed. The relationship between husband and wife is very good. Hearing this, Song Yang-hoi was speechless for a moment and then turned his head to look at me. Aunt, is uncle showing off? Is he? I was embarrassed by being looked at and looked at Mu Yin-jong again. Meeting his familiar gaze that seemed to be smiling, I subconsciously thought of last night and suddenly felt my ears began to heat up again. No, not sure, let's wait and see. After lunch, someone came from the palace and summoned Mu Yin-jong and me to the palace together. I immediately guessed that it was probably because of what happened yesterday. I subconsciously looked at Mu Yin-jong. He was instructing people to go to the woodshed in the backyard and bring along the assassins who were captured alive yesterday. After a night of interrogation, the assassins were not in good condition. Although their clothes were obviously changed, red marks on their necks could still be seen, as if they had been tied with hemp ropes. I pretended not to see it, just like last night, when I saw Mu Yin-jong under the osmondas tree. I clearly saw the bloodstains on the corner of his clothes, but I still didn't ask anything. If you don't ask, you won't know. Realizing that I was looking at him, Mu Yin-jong turned around and smiled at me. It's okay, don't worry, leave it to me next. I nodded and got into the carriage with Song Yang-hoi. When I arrived at the palace, I had just gone in to report when I heard my father's voice tell me how you, the fourth brother, are doing as a brother. Your sister went to your house to attend a banquet, but you didn't know how many people to send to escort them back to the house. Then the fourth prince Song Chi replied, Father, you are right. It was my negligence. Next time, I will definitely send more people to escort Jingshu back to the house. When I walked into the hall, I happened to see Song Chi looking at me. Seeing that I was unharmed, his smile deepened. Jingshu is here. Greetings to father and mother. I first greeted the two people sitting in the upper seats, and then looked at the three people below. Third brother, fourth brother, fifth brother, how are you? This person came quite well today. I subconsciously glanced at Mu Yin-jong, and saw that he greeted the three princes with a normal expression. It was impossible to tell whether he knew who the murderer was. Ping Ping, come here quickly and let your father and mother have a good look. The emperor saw me and immediately called me to his side. My mother also looked at me worriedly. I walked forward and smiled and held my mother's hand. Father and mother, I am fine. After Yin-jong noticed something was wrong, he immediately sent someone to Wuhan Marquis Mansion to deliver a message. The guards of Wuhan Marquis Mansion are all elite. Look, they even captured several assassins alive. Well, Yin-jong did a good job this time. He is worthy of being from Wuhan Marquis Mansion. Upon hearing this, the emperor praised Mu Yin-jong with great appreciation. Your Majesty, you are too kind. I am just worried that something might happen to Ping Ping. Mu Yin-jong said this with a smile. Obviously, my father and mother looked at him with more satisfaction. I pursed my lips and whispered, Father, Yin-jong interrogated the assassin for a long time yesterday. The emperor then reacted, hurry up and have someone bring the assassin up. I want to see who is so bold as to assassinate my princess under the emperor's feet. After saying this, I glanced at the three emperor brothers below, and saw that the three princes were all normal now. However, when one of the assassins was pressed up, I keenly noticed that the third prince's face changed slightly. This abnormal behavior naturally attracted the attention of others. The fourth prince seemed to be not surprised at all, with a calm expression on his face, and the fifth brother seemed to be unexpected, with a surprised look in his eyes. The emperor frowned and looked at the third prince sharply. Then, before anyone else could speak, Mu Yin-jong stepped forward. Your Majesty, Madam, after the interrogation in Yin-jong last night, we now know who is the mastermind behind the assassins. Who assassinated Ping Ping yesterday? After saying that, he seemed to wave his hand lightly, as if he was just pointing casually, but he convicted someone with one sentence. That is the third Prince Song Yu. It was not a surprising sentence, but it still caused an uproar in the hall. Father, I am innocent. I love my sister Ping Ping the most. How could I send someone to assassinate her? The third prince immediately shouted out his injustice. But the next second, Mu Yin-jong had someone take out the cloth ball from the assassin's mouth, and the assassin immediately knelt down and shouted, Your Highness, the third prince, I have been your guard for 3 years. You can't abandon me just because the matter is exposed. The third prince saw this and looked panicked. How dare you? I have many guards around me. What evidence do you have to prove that you are not working for me? Your Highness, the third prince, I have always been loyal to you. You are so disappointing. The assassin looked at the third prince in disbelief as he cut off his relationship with him. After sneering, he began to speak shockingly. Who in the palace doesn't know that your mother, the third prince, is of humble origin? In order to get the support of the queen's mother's family, you have tried hard to please the sixth princess, but the sixth princess didn't buy it at all. You were afraid that you couldn't get the support of the queen's mother's family, so you secretly killed her. The queen has only one child, the sixth princess. If the sixth princess dies, the third prince can naturally take advantage of the opportunity to get the queen's support. You are talking nonsense. The third prince was so angry that he wanted to go up and find out the assassin himself, but he was stopped by Mu Yinzhong's people. He glared at Mu Yinzhong with his eyes and suddenly sneered, "Mu Yinzhong, did you teach the assassin to say that?" I was wondering how a sickly person like you could foresee that there was an assassin and let someone ambush him in advance. It turns out that this is what you planned with others to frame this prince, right? Third brother, be careful with your words. Before Mu Yinzhong could speak, I stood up first. However, before I could figure out how to get rid of Mu Yinzhong, the assassin had already been holding a grudge against Mu Yinzhong because of the severe torture last night. When he heard what the third prince said, his eyes turned and he immediately changed his mind. Yes. The prince consort is also involved in this. The third prince colluded with the prince consort and wanted to kill the sixth princess, so that the prince consort could also take the princess family property alone, and the third prince could also get the queen's support. How dare you? I roared, and Shu Hua, who was following behind me, immediately stepped forward and slapped the assassin hard. Ha! The slap was so loud that not only did the assassin turn his head away, but it also made everyone else present quiet down. And I sneered and looked at the assassin in front of me with a cold look as if I was looking at a dead person. Everyone in and outside the palace knows that my consort is the weakest man. How dare you slander him for murdering my brother? As soon as these words came out, the hall was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. I looked around, and everyone's expressions were very complicated. Even Song Yanghui's face showed a familiar silence. Ping ping. Mu Yinzhong behind me had a hint of entanglement in his tone. I turned around and looked at him, with a hint of anger in his tone. What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Facing my sharp eyes, Mu Yinzhong blinked twice. Then, under my gaze, he smiled slightly and compromised. Well, your highness is right. I am weak and can't take care of myself. The final result was that due to insufficient evidence, the third Prince Song Yu was sentenced to temporary imprisonment in the mansion, and no visits were allowed. Everything will be determined after the investigation results come out. After this, the emperor seemed to suddenly realize something, and left the other two princes to talk alone. And I was also left by my mother to talk alone. You little girl, you scared me to death this time. The queen held my hand, worried. Fortunately Yinzhong was well prepared this time. Don't worry, mother, Yinzhong is very powerful. I couldn't help laughing when I said this, and thinking back to yesterday's experience, I felt it was really thrilling. By the way, mother, you don't know that at the critical moment yesterday, it was the crossbow that Yinzhong gave me that came in handy. I hope you two are fine, mother just hopes you are safe. The queen finally felt relieved after hearing this. Then she smiled and said, you chose the child in Yinzhong yourself. Mother was originally worried that Yinzhong was weak and couldn't protect you, and she wanted you to protect him instead. Today, when we meet, you two complement each other. Hee, isn't it? I smiled happily. Don't worry, I will ask your maternal family to investigate this matter. At this point, the queen's expression became serious. Although the assassin insisted that Song Yu instructed him, I have watched you grow up. Song Yu's brother is at best a thief with a heart but no courage. I don't believe he can do such a thing. But it's hard to say who the real mastermind is. My father has entered middle age, but he has not yet appointed a crown prince. There has been controversy in the court. Although the third prince's mother's family is humble, his mother has always been favored. My father also loves him very much, which has led to many ministers in the court supporting him. The most important one is the Jingnan King Xiao family. Xiao Shang also became friends with the third prince because of this. The fourth prince's mother, concubine Yun, is of noble birth. Although she is not very favored, she has the support of the Yan family behind her. The fourth prince has such a maternal family, and he is also very motivated, so many people in the court support him. Originally, the two should be evenly matched, and the third prince may even be slightly better because he is favored by the emperor. But now that the third prince is in trouble, the wind direction in the court is likely to change. It is about me, a legitimate princess. No matter how much my father dotes on my third brother, even if he takes into account the queen's mother's family behind me, he will never make the third prince the crown prince. In this way, the final beneficiary is my gentle fourth brother. On the carriage back to the mansion, I glanced at Song Yanghoi who was eating cakes obediently, and then at Mu Yinzhong who was in a good mood, but I was still a little confused. Is the real culprit behind this assassination really the third brother? Why do I feel that it is not possible? Well, it is indeed not possible. He is not that brave. Mu Yinzhong nodded and agreed with what I said. The assassin was also arranged by the real murderer a long time ago, right? The purpose is to deliberately frame the third prince. Maybe. Seeing Song Yanghoi eating happily, Mu Yinzhong also picked up a piece of cake and handed it to me. Didn't you interrogate him for a long time yesterday? Didn't the assassin tell the truth? I took the dessert and took a bite. I felt a little choked. Seeing this, Song Yanghoi on the side immediately poured me a cup of tea. To be honest, it was indeed the third prince who ordered it, but no one knows whether the third prince he mentioned is the real third prince. Mu Yinzhong looked at Song Yanghoi with satisfaction and expressed great appreciation for his foresight. What do you mean? Are you saying that someone falsely conveyed the will of the third prince and induced his people to assassinate me? I swallowed the whole cup of tea in one gulp, and almost choked because I drank too fast. I don't know. Mu Yunjong shook his head and took out a handkerchief to wipe the water stains from the corners of my mouth. The enemy is in the dark, we are in the light. Even in my previous life, I have not found out who the real culprit behind the scenes is. When these words came out, Song Yanghoi, who was drinking water at the side, was also choked. Uncle. He looked at Mu Yunjong in shock, and then looked at me. As the two looked at each other, I realized that I seemed to have forgotten something. This child suddenly chased to the princess mansion on the day when Yunjong fell into the water. He couldn't even speak clearly when he opened his mouth and was scared to tears by Mu Yunjong, and the familiarity between him and Mu Yunjong was not unfamiliar. Thinking back to the dream, Mu Yunjong was called the regent by the servants of the princess mansion. Is this child the future emperor? Aunt. Is she also reborn? When I came to my senses, I saw Song Yanghoi looking at me with a complicated expression. However, before I could explain that it was not the case, I heard him continue to say, "It doesn't look like it." Me. How can a little kid say bad words? Who are you calling a fool? I was just about to teach the kid a lesson. Don't be so bold just because you are the future emperor. Your aunt will always be your aunt. Then I suddenly realized what Mu Yunjong had just said. You mean, even in your previous life, you couldn't find out who killed me? I looked at Mu Yunjong in shock. Yes. When he said this, Mu Yunjong's eyes suddenly became a little dark. After you died in my previous life, I was depressed for a while. After that, the queen found out that the assassin might be the third prince's man. In a fit of rage, she mobilized the power of her mother's family to suppress the third prince, and the third prince lost the battle for the throne. My foundation was still shallow at that time, and the Marquis of Wuen's mansion had long been in decline. Even if I wanted to help you avenge, I was powerless. The queen is a smart person. After she calmed down, she guessed that the real culprit behind the scenes might not be the third prince, but you were dead at that time, and the servants who accompanied you to the Lotus banquet were also killed. The assassin did not leave any clues, so we had to investigate secretly while trying to control the court. Yang Hoi is the child of your eldest brother. In terms of status, he is the eldest grandson of your majesty, so he is naturally qualified to inherit the throne. So we investigated the truth while supporting Yang Hoi to take the throne. Yang Hoi worked hard and finally sat on the throne. However, the longer time passed, the more difficult it was to investigate the case. The real murderer was obviously well prepared. All the evidence that could be investigated pointed to the third prince. So until Yang Hoi ascended the throne, we were unable to find the real murderer. Listening to Mu Yunjong's low voice telling the story of his previous life, and recalling the countless nights in his dreams when he wandered alone in the princess mansion with a lantern, I suddenly felt distressed again. Okay, let's not talk about sad things. The past life is the past life, and this life is this life. We are still fine in this life. The real murderer hiding in the dark will be caught by us sooner or later. Mu Yunjong heard this, smiled and stretched out his hand to gently pinch my face, and said softly, Ping Ping is right, the real murderer will be caught by me sooner or later. Anyway, fortunately, you are fine in this life. After this, my father began to vigorously cultivate the remaining two princes. The fourth prince, who was already very outstanding, naturally, handled it well, but the fifth prince, who was obsessed with music and had no interest in government affairs, was miserable. The weather gradually became hotter. According to the rules of previous years, every year at this time, you have to go to the palace to escape the heat. Sure enough, a few days later, the palace received a letter that the emperor and his concubines went to the palace to escape the heat. And the princess and the prince consort also went together. But this time, probably because the fourth prince Songqi has been performing frequently in the court recently, the emperor ordered the fourth prince to stay as regent and the fifth prince to assist. During the month in the palace, I had nothing to do, so I took Song Yan back to the emperor every day. Over time, the sensible and smart Song Yan successfully won the emperor's favor. The emperor seemed to have just noticed that he had an eldest grandson, and when he thought of my eldest brother who died young, he also had some pity for the child, and occasionally taught him his lessons in person. In addition, my mother and I echoed him, and everyone knew that the little grandson was smart and clever, and the emperor loved him very much. But Mu Yunjong seemed to be very busy every day. Letters from the Wu'er Marquis mansion would be delivered every other day, bringing news from the capital. It is said that the fourth prince governs the country well, wins people over with virtue, and is deeply loved by the ministers. In comparison, the fifth prince was really unworthy of being reused and was totally unfit to manage the country. Seeing that the fourth prince's reputation in the court was getting better and better, finally, the day came for us to return to Beijing. On the day of returning to Beijing, the fourth prince Songqi and the court officials personally greeted him at the city gate, and his gestures had already shown the style of the crown prince. I secretly glanced at the emperor, and saw that although he was smiling and praising the fourth prince's ability, the smile did not reach his eyes. I silently withdrew my gaze and took Mu Yunjong's hand to get on the carriage back to the palace. For some reason, the atmosphere in the carriage was inexplicably quiet. When we arrived at the palace, Mu Yunjong suddenly said to me, Ping Ping, stay by my side during the palace banquet later, and don't run around. I'm afraid someone can't hold it back. I was stunned by his words, and when I thought of the letters sent by Wang Ho for these days, I felt a chill in my heart. So, is it the fourth brother? Mu Yinzhong stopped talking. The next second, the carriage stopped at the gate of the palace. I lifted the curtain and looked at the towering palace wall in front of me. I felt more and more depressed, as if something big was about to happen. Yang Hui, protect your aunt later and don't leave her. Before getting off the carriage, Mu Yinzhong instructed Song Yanghui. After getting Song Yanghui's affirmative answer, he jumped off the carriage and stretched out his hand to me with a smile. Ping Ping, come down. Take his hand. He helped me down from the carriage steadily, then leaned down and whispered in my ear, don't be afraid, I won't let anything happen to you. In front of me was a banquet with singing and dancing. I looked at the exquisite dishes in front of me, but I had no appetite at all. Looking around, the emperor and the empress sitting at the top were toasting their glasses with a smile, and the concubines in the palaces were also competing for beauty. But there was a familiar figure missing. Where is concubine Ying? Why is she not here on such a solemn occasion as my father's return to the palace today? Concubine Ying claimed to be sick when she went to the palace to escape the summer heat, but in such a lively occasion today, even if she is not well, she should show up, right? Princess, concubine Ye invited the imperial physician last night, saying that she had a headache and could not get out of bed yet. Shu Hua whispered in my ear. Oh, what a coincidence. I raised my eyebrows and glanced at Song Qi, who was sitting opposite. He was having a good chat with the prime minister at the bottom, and his expression was as gentle as ever, with no abnormality at all. So I turned around and asked Mu Yinzhong. Yinzhong, do you think the imperial concubine really has a headache? Mu Yinzhong smiled softly, picked up the wine glass in front of him and took a sip, who knows? I was about to speak when a maid passed by me with a wine pot and accidentally knocked it over and splashed it all over me. Ping Ping. Mu Yinzhong immediately pulled me into his arms, and then said to the maid coldly, which palace are you from? Why are you so clumsy? The maid was so scared that she immediately knelt down and begged for mercy, princess, spare me. I didn't mean it. I am a maid in the palace of imperial concubine Ying. What a coincidence. I was just talking about imperial concubine Ying, and now the maid in the palace of imperial concubine Ying splashed me all over. Maybe the noise was a bit loud, and other people at the banquet also looked over. I subconsciously looked at Songqi, and saw that after he saw the palace maid kneeling on the ground, he frowned calmly, and then scolded, what are you still standing there for? Why don't you take the princess to change clean clothes? How can there be such a stupid palace maid like you in the mother's palace? As soon as these words came out, I clearly felt that Mu Yinzhong's hand holding me tightened obviously. Yes, your highness the fourth prince. The palace maid echoed repeatedly, then turned her head and looked at me and said, princess, please. Follow me, I will take you to change clothes now. The palace maid's eyes were clear and scared, as if she was really worried about being blamed by the fourth prince. Go, or not. I looked at Mu Yinzhong, who silently clenched his fists, hesitated for a moment, and reached out to pat his hand that was tightly holding me. It's okay, Yinzhong. I said softly, I'll be back soon, you just stay here and take good care of my father and mother. I don't know what Song Shi wants to do. No. If something goes wrong, protecting my father's safety is the most important thing. The third prince Song Yu has been imprisoned. My existence does not pose any threat to Song Qi. Even if this maid was deliberately arranged by him, my life should not be in danger. What's more, at this moment, I still have a dagger hidden in my sleeve that Mu Yinzhong stuffed into me before getting off the carriage. The exquisitely crafted crossbow was left on the carriage because it was inconvenient to carry, but a dagger was enough to deal with a little maid. After all, this is the palace, she dare not really do anything to me. Okay. After a long time, Mu Yinzhong let me go. Yang Hui. Follow your aunt well. He glanced at Song Yanghui on the side. His tone was as usual, but Song Yanghui, who looked at him, seemed to be pricked by a needle and immediately put down the chopsticks in his hand. Yes, uncle. Song Yanghui hurried over and followed me. Song Yanghui still held my sleeve tightly until I followed the palace maid out of the banquet hall. I found him funny when I saw him like this. Yanghui is afraid of uncle. Song Yanghui didn't say anything, but his eyes clearly told me the answer. Why? Did uncle bully you? Song Yanghui still didn't say anything. Don't be afraid, kid. If uncle bullies you, you can tell aunt secretly. At this point, I was already in a playful mood and pinched Song Yanghui's face. Song Yanghui was pinched by me, and then he said reluctantly, no, uncle treats me very well. Hey, little guy. I couldn't help laughing. When I passed the pavilion in the imperial garden, I saw an old acquaintance standing inside. Xiao Shen, why are you here? I put away the smile on my face and looked at him with vigilance. Su Hua, who was following me, immediately protected me. The Xiao family has always been on good terms with the third prince. After the third prince was imprisoned, Xiao Shen also behaved a lot. The Junnan king came to the banquet today with his family, but I didn't see Xiao Shen at the banquet just now. I thought he didn't come today. Song Jingshu, how are you? Xiao Shen smiled when he saw me, and then he looked at the maid next to him. The maid rushed up and knocked Su Hua unconscious. What are you doing? Seeing Su Hua fainted on the ground, I subconsciously took a step back. Looking at the maid in front of me who was obviously not like an ordinary person, and thinking of her identity, I felt that a light suddenly flashed in my mind, and the doubts that had been lingering in my mind these days suddenly had an answer. Why could the real murderer behind my assassination drive the people of the third prince's mansion without being noticed by anyone? Of course, it was because he had a good personal relationship with the third prince, so he was very good at framing him, and even the third prince himself did not notice anything unusual. And the Xiao family has always been the third prince's faction in the court. Who would have thought that the Prince Xiao Shun would secretly stand on the side of the fourth prince, and even use his relationship with the third prince to frame him in turn? Xiao Shun, you are such a two-faced villain. I was so angry that I couldn't help cursing. Oh, you're not that stupid. Xiao Shun laughed happily after being scolded by me. I thought you were simple-minded like your third brother. Now it seems that you are much smarter than him. As he said that, he winked at the maid, and the maid carried the unconscious Su Hua and retreated obediently. Then Xiao Shun approached me step by step. I protected Song Yanghui and retreated quickly until I hit the pillar of the pavilion behind me, and there was no way to retreat. Okay, Song Jingshu, don't waste your time. He reached out and grabbed my wrist, and the smile on his face looked so gloomy and terrifying. After all, we are childhood sweethearts. I was sorry for you last time. I thought your fourth brother wanted to pretend and then frame the third prince. I didn't expect him to be so cruel. It was also my mistake. Tell me, if you had married me properly, wouldn't you have had all these things happen now? Your fourth brother wants the throne, my father wants power, but I'm different. I don't have any big ambitions. If you are willing to marry me, I can be your consort. But who made you blind? You actually fell in love with that sickly Mu Yinzhong. My life, your mother can also enjoy her old age in peace. Xiao Shun, you lunatic. I glared at him fiercely, not wanting to answer him at all. Xiao Shun sneered and was about to touch my face, but his face suddenly changed, and then he screamed. I looked at him and saw a hairpin stuck in his left thigh. The hairpin had been completely inserted into his flesh, and blood gushed out immediately, staining the surrounding fabric red. Xiao Shun frowned in pain, and looked fiercely at the culprit who caused his injury. It was Song Yanghui who had been pretending to be scared and was protected in my arms. He had pulled the hairpin from my head without my knowledge, and just now, while Xiao Shun was not paying attention, he used all his strength to thrust the hairpin into his thigh. Stay away from my aunt. The little boy, with his features still slightly immature, stared at Xiao Shun tightly, holding the dagger that he had taken out of my sleeve at some point. Little bastard, I forgot about you. Xiao Shun didn't expect to be read by a child. He looked at Song Yanghui as if he wanted to eat him alive, and raised his hand to slap him. Song Yanghui was about to reach out to block, but I protected him tightly in my arms. I rolled over on the ground with him in my arms. While Xiao Shun was injured and unable to move, I took the dagger from Song Yanghui's hand and stabbed Xiao Shun in the stomach without hesitation. A few drops of blood splashed on my face, warm, with a hint of sweet and fishy smell. I looked at the disbelief in Xiao Shun's eyes and suddenly felt like laughing. Did you see that, Xiao Shun? The dagger that you think is flashy can also hurt people. Seeing that he was about to collapse, I pulled out the dagger mercilessly and let him fall backwards with a cold look in my eyes. I am a princess who is high above everyone else. Do you think you are worthy of me? Xiao Shun fell to the ground, spitting blood and looking at me unwillingly. Song Jingshu, I underestimated you. Before I could do anything else, Song Yan came back and kicked him hard at the injured part. Seeing that Xiao Shun was almost fainted. From the pain, he still forced himself to reach out and grab the corner of my clothes. Song Jingshu, I advise you to leave the palace immediately, otherwise your ruthless fourth brother may not let you go after the matter is done. Thank you for the advice, I know what to do, so don't bother Xiao Shizi to worry about it. I said while kicking his hand away, took out a handkerchief to wipe the blood off my face, and then wiped the dagger clean. Xiao Shun was anxious, as if he was really worried about my safety. Song Jingshu, Song Qi is not as easy to deal with as me. Saving your life is important, don't be stubborn. I know. I sneered and put the dagger back into my sleeve. But I won't. I am not a fool, I know the principle of hitting the snake at its weakest point. Song Yi is obviously well prepared. Even if I return to the banquet hall now, I may not be able to help, but it is different outside. In this harem, there is still someone that the fourth prince cares about. Why did she keep saying she was sick? Why did she suddenly have a headache? I don't believe this is really a coincidence. Let's go, Yanghui. Let's go to Concubine Yin's palace. When the news of the fourth prince forcing the emperor to abdicate came, I was sitting with Concubine Yin drinking tea. From the moment I saw Concubine Yin when I entered the door, I knew that everything was Song Qi's plan. Concubine Yin was not sick at all, and even after seeing me coming, she showed an expression of as expected on her face. The maid next to her probably received instructions from Song Qi. When she saw me, her face changed and she wanted to go out to report the news, but Concubine Yin reached out to stop her. Why is Ping Ping so embarrassed today? She looked at the clothes on my body and smiled as usual. Go change your clothes quickly, and then have a good cup of tea with Queen Yun. Queen Yun is my nickname for Concubine Yin. Because my mother is on good terms with concubine Yun, I have been very close to concubine Yun since I was a child. Madam Yun, don't you ask me why I came? I said, reaching out to touch the dagger in my sleeve. What's there to ask? You'll know in a minute. Concubine Yun was still smiling, but she seemed to see through my intentions and said meaningfully, don't worry, no one dares to hurt you in Madam Yun's palace. For some reason, I subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief when I heard her words. Then I felt ironic again. Why do I still subconsciously want to believe her at this time? If Ping Ping is worried about the servants, then I will go with you. Concubine Yun walked up and held my hand. Seeing that Song Yang Hui next to me subconsciously wanted to take action, I reached out and held him down. Okay. I looked at concubine Yun and decided to trust this woman who watched me grow up one last time. Then I'll trouble Lady Yun. Walking to the back hall with concubine Yun, I looked at the cabinets full of silks and satins, and finally chose a vermilion riding uniform. Let's take this one, it's convenient for movement. I didn't say why I wanted it to be convenient for movement. Ping Ping has good taste. Concubine Yun didn't seem to care, but looked at the riding uniform I chose, revealing a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. This is the riding uniform I wore when I was young and went hunting with your father. I was not in the mood to listen to stories. In front of her, I quickly took off my gorgeous and complicated palace clothes, picked up the riding uniform and put it on. But concubine Yun continued to speak. I was born in the Yin family, and my family education was very strict. I went to the family private school since I was a child, and I read female rules and female precepts. I would never dare to do sports like riding horses before I got married. Until later, I married your father. At that time, your father was still a prince, and I was his concubine. When we were newly married, he took me to ride a horse. I said I couldn't do it, so he taught me step by step. I said I was afraid, so he coaxed me carefully. Ping Ping, Empress Ying, was also young, and she also had a young man she loved, just like you and Yin Zhong. I thought at that time that I would love your father for the rest of my life. When the voice fell, I had already changed my clothes. When I heard her last sentence, my heart ached for no reason. Father has always respected you. But concubine Yu smiled. Yes, he has always respected me, so he gave me the position of imperial concubine and the power to assist in the management of the 6 palaces. But no one has ever asked me if this is the respect I want. She walked up to me, straightened my collar, and then stroked my cheek and said softly, Ping Ping, don't blame your 4th brother, he has a hard life. If he was born in an ordinary family, he would be a good son who is filial to his parents and a good brother who loves his sister. But being born in the royal family means that he is destined to not be a good son or a good brother. Song Chi came to me with a sword. The sword I gave him was his birthday gift when he came of age. At this moment, in addition to the cold light flashing on the sword edge, there were also a few drops of blood that had not dried. Although I didn't know who the owner of the blood was, I subconsciously felt a tightness in my heart. I clenched the dagger in my hand and pressed it against the neck of imperial concubine Yun. 4th brother, how are you? Jingshaw, you are really smart. Song Chi looked at me with such gentle eyes, as if nothing had happened, and he was still the good brother who loved his sister. Okay, don't make 4th brother angry, 4th brother can barely keep you and Yin Zhong alive. He said in a friendly tone, as if he was joking with me when he was a child. Although I have 4 brothers, I have the best relationship with Song Chi since I was a child. When I was young and ignorant, I called him 4th brother. But now I just feel ironic. 4th brother, I dare not believe what you said. I sneered. Xiao Sheng told me that the assassination was the idea of the 4th brother. Since the 4th brother wanted to kill me so early, don't pretend now. After the voice fell, I clearly felt that concubine Ying in my arms trembled, and then looked at Song Chi as if she couldn't believe it. Chiara, you actually did this? Faced with concubine Ying's questioning, Song Chi avoided her sight as if evading, not daring to look her in the face. But when I saw this scene, I felt cold in my heart. Mrs. Ying, you don't know yet, this is not the first time that the 4th prince wants to kill me. After saying this, I saw Song Chi looking at me in surprise. And I continued, on that winter day many years ago, when I met Yin Zhong, I accidentally fell into the lake because I got separated from the 4th prince, and I almost died. That time, was it the 4th prince's intention? Seeing Song Chi's face turn ugly, concubine Ying also looked at me in shock. The secret that had been sealed for many years was revealed, and even I, when I mentioned this matter, subconsciously wanted to avoid it. I saw it all. I didn't just slip and fall into the lake. It was you, my 4th brother, who pushed me in with your own hands. Shut up. Song Chi was so angry that he wanted to rush over, but I used a little force with the dagger in my hand, and a blood mark appeared on concubine Yu's neck. He immediately stopped where he was and dared not move again. I looked at him, as if I was looking through him now, and recalled the good brother who loved his sister. But then the 4th brother regretted it and came back to save me, and then he happened to see Yin Zhong saving me from the water. I know that the 4th brother regretted it, so he waited in the mother's palace until I woke up. After that, when I was in bed recuperating, you also brought a lot of things to see me every day. So I forgive the 4th brother, and I don't blame you. I just think that fate played a joke on me and made me and Yin Zhong connected. But 4th brother, why When I said this, I even had a hint of crying in my tone. Why me? Why did you take my life to put the blame on the third brother? Am I not your most beloved sister? Shut up, Song Jingshaw. The fourth prince looked at me with red eyes, full of anger that I couldn't understand. Why did you forgive me? I have been suffering for so many years because of this matter. Sometimes I think that if I had been a little more cruel and let you drown, it would be better than these years of suffering in my heart. I always feel sorry for you. If you had died back then, Song Jingshaw, why did you survive? He looked at me so angrily, as if he really wanted me to die at that time. Why are you so flamboyant and bright, living the way a royal family should be, while I have been disliked by my father since I was a child, and my status in my father's eyes is not even as good as that fool Song Yi. I try so hard, but I still can't compare with you. Tell me, how can I stop hating you? So, is this the reason why fourth brother ever called me a little brother for so many years? I asked this question tremblingly, and even the dagger in my hand was about to be unstable. Song Qi was silent with red eyes. Concubine Yin looked at me with heartache, as if she wanted to comfort me. But I felt a surge of anger in my heart, so I said, without thinking, but fourth brother, have you ever thought about why the Empress didn't give birth to a legitimate son for many years after I was born? Why Concubine Yin has a prominent family background, but my father only favors Concubine Li? Why? My third brother is stupid, but my father still loves him. The words that came out of my mouth stunned Song Qi and Concubine Yin. Song Qi, the reason for all your resentment and jealousy is nothing but the Emperor's power tactics. Pampering the son of the favorite concubine and ignoring the son of the concubine, behind all this is nothing more than the Emperor's balancing technique. Being in the royal family, everyone is helpless. Even the Emperor and the Queen who truly love each other are still secretly wary of each other in their hearts. Because the Empress has no children, my father loves me very much. Because the Wuhan Marquis mansion is in decline, my father easily agreed to my engagement with Yin Zhong. Because you, my fourth brother, are too outstanding, my father wants to suppress you. Glancing at the familiar silver light not far away, I finally let go of the string in my heart and looked at the fourth prince who couldn't believe what I said with pity. Fourth brother, this is our fate. As soon as the words fell, an arrow shot from a distance and pierced Song Qi's chest. The crossbow that had not seen blood for many years finally played its original role. Seeing Song Qi being pierced through the heart by an arrow, Concubine Yin broke free from my hands and ran over like crazy. I was worried about her safety and reached out to hold her, but was grabbed by Song Yanghoi who had been following me. Then a large group of guards from the Wuhan Marquis mansion suddenly rushed in and subdued the remnants of Song Qi in the palace in a few moves. When Mu Yin Zhong walked out of the crowd, his green robe was already stained with blood. He rushed to me in 3 or 2 steps and held me tightly in his arms. Fortunately you are okay, fortunately you are okay. His tone was trembling slightly, as if he was afraid. Do you know how scared I was when I saw the unconscious So Hua? If something happened to you, what's the point of me starting over again? I didn't know what to say, so I reached out and hugged him back, trying my best to rub myself into his body. Ping Ping, please don't leave me again. Well, I know, I won't leave you again. Thinking back to what happened just now, I suddenly let down my guard and felt a little weak in my legs. At this time, Concubine Yu, who was not far away, suddenly shouted Song Qi's name. I quickly signaled Mu Yinzhong to let me go, and then looked over there. It turned out that Song Qi was dying. Even at such a long distance, Mu Yinzhong still shot the arrow into Song Qi's chest very accurately. Song Qi fell into Concubine Ye's arms at this moment. Concubine Yin was holding her only son and crying so hard that she was about to faint. Song Qi, who was originally spitting blood, seemed to have a last burst of light and reached out to gently touch Concubine Yin's face. Mother, don't cry. He looked at Concubine Yin gently, as if he was saying goodbye for the last time. It's my son, who is unfilial and has implicated mother. Fourth brother. After hesitating for a while, I still walked over and looked at this brother who once loved me so much. Fourth brother, don't worry, I will take good care of Queen Yang. Ping Ping. My brother, who was always gentle and elegant, finally called my nickname when he was dying. He looked at me with guilt and reached out to touch my face, but stopped halfway. Fourth brother is sorry for you. I watched his eyes gradually fade, and in the end he seemed to see nothing. He raised his head slightly, staring at the sky with his eyes blankly. Really? I'm so unwilling. My favorite brother, in the end, fell in front of his most beloved sister, and died in the arms of his most beloved mother. He was smart all his life, but confused for a moment, and his smartness backfired. He was only in his 20s. If he had not been born in the royal family, he could have had an extremely bright future. It was not until then that I finally understood the meaning of what Concubine Yu said to me. Being born in the royal family, for me and for him, is the original sin. I doubted him, and he did it really cleanly without leaving any traces. Even if I suspected him, I couldn't produce any evidence. In his previous life, he probably thought he had a sure win. The queen was so sad that she suppressed the third prince. He lost his strongest competitor, and the fifth prince was not worth using. As long as he didn't show any traces, the throne would be his sooner or later. But he never expected that I would suddenly cheer up, and there would be Yang Hoi, a fish that slipped through the net. He sent someone to assassinate you on the way back from the banquet that day. He should have wanted to kill Yang Hui, the hidden danger, in the cradle. Unfortunately, I was prepared, and his idea failed. In the end, because of insufficient evidence, the third prince was only imprisoned, so he got anxious. At this time, His Majesty took everyone to the temporary palace to escape the summer heat. This was his best opportunity, and he certainly would not let it go. With the good reputation of his foreign family, and the fifth prince as a foil, he naturally, quickly bribed many ministers. He thought he had a sure win, but in fact, when His Majesty returned to Beijing and saw him getting along well with a group of ministers, he began to doubt him in his heart. On the way to the imperial study, Mu Yunzhong slowly told all these things. He was worthy of being Song Qi's former companion and knew Song Qi very well. He basically guessed Song Qi's thoughts. I told him about the conversation I had just had with Xiao Sheng in the pavilion. He thought about it and said, in fact, what Xiao Sheng said is not unreasonable. Although you died of assassination in your previous life, the final cause of death was poisoning. When I heard him talk about the cause of my death, my eyes widened. Although I was a ghost in the dream, I had no memory of how I died. I thought I was assassinated, maybe even died miserably, without even a complete body. Song Qi may not really want to kill you. He probably wanted to kidnap you and hide you to create the illusion that you were dead. The poison must have been given by his men. I guess it's because you fought hard and accidentally pulled off your veil during the struggle, and saw their faces. They were afraid of being exposed, so they poisoned you. Hearing Mu Yunzhong say this, I subconsciously thought that this might be true. After all, I'm not someone who waits for death honestly. I will definitely find a way to resist. When I found you in the ruined temple on the outskirts of the city, it was full of assassins' bodies. Maybe Song Qi saw that they actually poisoned you, so he killed them all in anger, and you were left alone. In the innermost piece of clean land, with your last breath left. Although Mu Yunzhong said this in a speculative tone, I can imagine the scene at that time. So, my fourth brother, he didn't really want to kill me. Right. As we were about to reach the imperial study, I looked at the guards of Wuhan Marquis mansion around me and suddenly realized something. Are all the people who came to rescue you today your parents' old subordinates? The Wuhan Marquis mansion was born of military generals. Even if Wuhan Marquis and his wife died in battle, they still had old subordinates under their command. Yes. Mu Yunzhong nodded, and then suddenly said coquettishly, we have met for so long, why didn't Ping Ping ask if I was okay? I am so weak, Ping Ping doesn't feel sorry for me. Puff. I couldn't help laughing. Looking at his blood-stained clothes, although I knew he was not in any danger of life, I still said seriously, of course I feel sorry for you, so I don't want your plan to fail. But it seems that this time, our Xiao Yanshan will make a contribution. At this moment, I am sincerely happy for these two brothers. Since the death of the Marquis and his wife in battle, the Marquis of Wuhan Mansion has been in decline for many years, but now it has become a sensation. Walking into the hall, I saw the Emperor and the Empress sitting at the top. And standing below them was the young man covered with white satin in front of me, and the little maid who stayed with him all day. Brother, sister-in-law. Hearing the movement, at the prompting of the little maid, the young Marquis bowed to us. Yunshan, there is no need to be polite. You are a meritorious official today, I said with a smile. Everything has settled, and it is natural to reward according to merit. Wuhan Marquis is a super first-class Marquis, so the reward for Mu Yingshan cannot be sloppy. He was awarded 300 households of food and a fief in the rich land of Jiangnan, 10,000 taels of gold, 1,000 pieces of brocade, and many other imperial gifts. After this incident, the emperor seemed to have come to his senses, so 2 imperial edicts were issued, and the third prince who was originally imprisoned in the palace and the fifth prince who was present at the moment were both made kings. They would set out directly to their fiefdoms 3 days later and could not return to the capital without being summoned. Song Yanghui, who had been following me, successfully picked up the opportunity and became the first grandson of the emperor in my dynasty. After several imperial edicts were issued in succession, the emperor's face was already tired, and at this time the queen leaned close to his ear and said something, and he looked towards me. It was not until this time that the emperor looked at Mu Yunzhong, the sickly son-in-law who he had thought could not cause any trouble, for the first time. In theory, this dynasty does not allow the son-in-law to serve in the court. However, Mu Yunzhong's contribution to saving the emperor this time, and probably after learning the truth about the fourth prince's rebellion, he felt a sense of indebtedness to me, his daughter, so he opened his mouth and allowed Mu Yunzhong to make a request. Even if he wanted a position, he would agree. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Mu Yunzhong with expectation, especially me and Song Yanghui. No one knows better than me how talented Mu Yunzhong is, and no one remembers better than Song Yanghui how much his uncle was admired by everyone. His talent should be known by more people. He is not only the son-in-law of Song Jingshu, but also the eldest son of the Marquis of Wuhan, a proud son of heaven praised by countless teachers. Facing everyone's expectations, Mu Yunzhong just smiled slightly. Your Majesty, Yunzhong once read a poem when he was young. Now that I think about it, I want to read it to your Majesty. Oh. The emperor was interested. What is there in the mountains? There are many white clouds on the ridge. I can only enjoy it myself, not give it to you. Mu Yunzhong finished reading the poem with a smile, as if he didn't see the surprised expressions of others present, and continued, when I read this poem when I was young, I couldn't understand the full meaning. I just knew to admire the poet's noble character and his lack of fame and fortune. However, when I read it again now, I read it with a different taste. I think, maybe for me, my white clouds on the ridge have only one person from beginning to end. After saying that, he looked at me with a smile. The moment I met his eyes, I remembered the winter when the boy rescued me from the cold lake. It happened that the clouds passed and the sky cleared, and a ray of sunlight sprinkled from his head, so warm and so dazzling. So I remembered it for many years without paying attention. She is mine, the white cloud in my heart.